I have one of my favorite humans on today to tell you about an amazing product that we both love.
Well, thank you, honey. This is Milkman Mark Hyman here telling you about the almond cow, which I saw on those Instagram posts, and I thought, we've got to have one of these and see whether it is actually as good as it looks. And it is. It's actually even better because there are things that you can make out of it. Almond milk, oat milk,
Cashew milk.
coconut milk, anything you want, you can make in this. And what's great is there are fewer preservatives, less sugar, and then what you get left over at the end is this pulp that you can make cookies or muffins, so nothing goes to waste.
And it's there anytime. So if you run out of milk, you don't have to run to the store. It is so amazing. We love it, love it, love it. So if you want to get your own, check out the link and use code Laura for extra savings.
Approved by the Milkman.
Good movement, and welcome to Redefining Yoga, a lit yoga podcast, which is designed to investigate all aspects of the modern evolution of yoga from my background as a physical therapist and lover of movement. My mission is to help everyone find freedom through smarter and safer movement patterns, so together we can be uplifted, benefiting all beings. Welcome to Wednesday Q&A, where you ask the questions and we answer with joy and excitement. I am joined by my beautiful co-host, physical therapist, lit senior teacher, all-around stellar human, Kristen Williams.
Oh, thank you, Laura. This is wonderful to be here. I love doing this with you. You're like
I
one of
love
my
it
favorite
too.
people in the whole wide world. So we have some great questions to get to today. Let's go ahead and start with one that came in through support at Lit Yoga. This one is from Jordan Sumter. Hi, Laura. Love the podcast, and I have a question for Wednesday's Q&A. I am a yoga instructor and competitive dance teacher. I love to incorporate yoga into classes. The kids also love it. I have a dancer who also trains in pre-professional ballet program. She's 13 and very hypermobile. She has started to develop this issue where her knees pop out. She's popped her right knee out twice, and now recently her left one. Her PT thinks she has Ehlers-Danlos, and she'll just grow out of it. So her and her parents are just kind of treating it pretty normal and repeating the cycle when it happens. Parentheses, cries, pops knee in, modifies jumps but keeps dancing, starts PT again for a couple of weeks, resume full dancing 5 to 6 days a week, and parentheses. Do you have recommendations on certain things I could offer in our yoga part of class to help maybe strengthen her muscles? Or is it something I can't really help with in class? To be honest, I'm just worried about it popping out in my class during our competitive routine.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Jordan, no, I don't think there's anything you can do in a group class that's going to help her enough. And not to be a Debbie Downer, but this is a situation that, I mean, the fact that she's already dislocating the patella, and she's done it several times, and you don't outgrow hypermobility. So that's wrong information. So the negative is this. It's only going to get worse. And the more you pop it out, the more basically the proprioception, the structural integrity that might be there is only going to decrease, which means it's going to get to the point where I've seen these people, they end up having to have corrective surgery because they just don't have any structural integrity to hold that knee in place. And it's not just the knee, obviously, it's up the chain that's creating this impact that would sublux or dislocate her joint, her patella. So dance is double-edged sword. It's probably something she could seemingly excel at because aesthetically she can make shapes because of this hypermobility, but it is also absolutely going to end up making all of this so much worse on her joints. And that's very hard to say to a kid. I'm trying to imagine being in that position. My child loves dance, wants to do it. And the fact is everybody's body is a little different and everybody's history and genetics. And then you add something like this, Ehlers-Danlos, or anything on the hypermobility syndrome onto that. And there's just some activities that are really not going to be good for these people, unfortunately. What somebody with hypermobility needs is stability, needs a lot of very, very restrained movement with a lot of core stabilization and not going anywhere near to that end range. Remember, hypermobility is not just going to the end range, it's going beyond the end range. And people with this often don't even they don't feel it. They're like legs up in the air, legs around their head. It feels like nothing to them. Whereas, the regular kind of nervous system community with collagen that isn't, having some kind of difference are going to be like getting all kinds of feedback. They could never do it. So that's the hugest problem, is that dance is going to ask her to go into big ranges. She's not going to feel what those big ranges are doing to the joints. She's not getting any feedback. And clearly that's happening already with the knee. So there's nothing, I hate to say it this way, I don't think there's anything you can do in a group class that's going to help her in that. And if I could add anything positive, I would say she needs to have one-on-one sessions with a knowledgeable PT who knows a lot about hypermobility, that it is not something that goes away. It gets worse if it's not addressed. I do have a podcast with the Hypermobility MD, and maybe suggesting her parents listen to that, because she really talks about how there are these stages of hypermobility. And this young gal is in the first one, which is the fun stage, but she's kind of going into the second one, which is the, where things start to not feel so great. But the fun stage is like, hey, I can do all these things. And, but it's the stage where people don't pay as much attention because there aren't any major symptoms happening. She's already getting some symptoms, which, having your patella sublux is not a normal occurrence. So that's I hate to be the downer, but like,
yeah, this breaks my heart.
It breaks my,
I totally see this where these young girls are lauded for their flexibility, and that's how they get into dance. That's how they get into gymnastics. That's how they get into cheerleading, these flyer positions where they are applauded for being able to do this stuff at a young age. They are pushed to improve that flexibility without any notice being paid to the strength. And yeah, she's 13 and she's already suffering from this. So I think what you could do, because you did say at the end, honestly, I just don't want it to happen in my class. So this is where you're paying attention to her. The ballerina wants to toe out everything. Well, that toe out position, then you bend the knee, that patella wants to pop out. It wants to track laterally because of that, that position of the hip and foot. So really watching her in a goddess, that she's not going to her ballet second position or whatever that, I guess it would be, but whatever, plie squat. She is in a 45-degree at max foot position. You're watching her in side lunges, that she is not going to a place where her knees passing the toe. She's sitting back into the hips. That her movements are smaller in your class, and if it is a class setting that you really don't want to keep calling her out, then, and you are maybe with all ballerinas, then you choreograph that class to be smaller, to really work on stability that they're going to find actually probably pretty hard. Airplane pose, things, those little things that we take for granted, ballerinas tend to, they're shocked. That controlled movement between poses, the small movements, the getting her into a neutral pelvis just to have her work there. So that's going to be for you, so she is less likely to dislocate in your class. Because I agree with Laura, if she continues on this pre-professional ballet track 5 to 6 days a week, subluxing her knee or dislocating her knee, getting it put back in, a couple weeks of physical therapy, she's right back on it. This will only get worse. She is stretching those ligaments. They don't come back. They are already loose. Now she's making them looser, so she has less feedback, which is why she's going to just see this happen more and more and more and more, because normally in a normal body, we'll feel that strain and we'll pull back. Well, she has none of that. She has none of that mechanoreceptor action working already. And then now she stretched it, so it's even worse. I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings.
No, I do too.
Going to continue happening.
No, and we're always like, hey, we can make this, we can help you with this. But this is something that she can be helped, but it's not going to be in this ballet world, unfortunately. It really isn't, because the knee already being unstable, like Kristen was mentioning, if she flexes and she's in this kind of, flexing and loading and then going to turn, like any kind of rotation with that. I mean, she doesn't have ligamentous stability. That's also probably, I bet she doesn't have really good proximal stability in her hips to help that. So it's translating down. So she really needs to go into like a boot camp for proximal stability, smaller movement. And I don't know if that would then allow her to come back to it. My gut would say no, but I don't want to be, again, like trashing on someone's dreams. That's the hardest thing in the world. But you have to think about it like this. Like, my son is almost 6'6". He's playing basketball, but if he didn't grow to 6'6", like, as much as he loves basketball, it might not have happened for him. We have some genetic propensity to make, like I'm talking about, not just like all of us that are just doing yoga for fun, not as a profession, but to do something really seriously and focused, whether you want to do it as a long-term like passion or a career or play, collegiately, you do have to have some genetics on your side, at least, not against you. Okay. That isn't to say that everybody has to be 6'5". It doesn't. It's just that he's not talented enough, and no offense, Jenna, but in other ways his height helps him on that end, right? So if you already have some genetics that are not working for you significantly in a specific sport activity that is going to constantly butt up against that is just where you have to say, like, this might not be the right thing. So hard to hear. I'm sorry to hear that, Jordan. I hope she. Deep breath with that. So sad. Sorry about that. Okay, so on to the next question. This is from Susan. I have cervical stenosis, and thanks to you, I don't do headstands anymore. Are there any other poses to avoid? You want to start off with that? Maybe tell everybody what cervical stenosis is.
Yeah, so stenosis is a narrowing of space. And so when the cervical spine, we will see it occur in two areas. The area where the spinal cord comes down, and also the areas where the spinal nerves come out. So no matter which one she's describing, when we have that narrowing, we really want to avoid provocative positions that narrow it further, specifically, especially in the facet joints, the extension. Extension is going to close down, and then flexion will tend to open up. And so, yes, I would really watch your cobra, watch so many traditional lit, low lunge, lizard. There's this whole throw the head back because it's, I don't know, you're saluting the sun or something. It's just the worst possible thing you could do. Extension is not good for stenosis. This would be in the low back. This would be in the neck. Because you're closing down on an area that is already closed down, either with bony tissue or sometimes with ligamentous thickening, or even with a disc bulge or herniation, or even a shift. We get this closing down. So we want to maintain neutral. So I'm not saying flex at the spine, but just finding neutral is really going to help you to stack better, weight bear better. You're already not weight bearing through the head, which is very, very smart. But, watch. And that's really, I want to say that's hard to feel. So I would recommend taking video of yourself doing things. I have worked with people who have had neck issues, who literally hurt themselves badly doing headstands. And while they might feel that they're not in that forward head, in the forward head position, we get extension in the upper cervical spine, flexion in the lower cervical spine. They really feel, but I'm in good posture. It's like, when I show them the video, oh my goodness, we really need to develop that strength here. So video yourself, watch yourself when you do a plank, that you're not jutting your head forward, that you're lifted in the backside of the head and the backside of the jaw, like the mastoid process, that you're not throwing your head back in. in cobra, in locust, in so many different lunge variations that we do, that you're not turning your head up to look at the sky. You're just, again, provoking something that doesn't, we don't want to scratch a scab. We want to just let things heal. We want to heal through movement in the most healthy way. And that's going to be finding that triple S, strengthening the front side, getting that natural curve back as best you can, which then will, people are walking around with terrible stenosis who have no pain. So stenosis does not equate with pain. Stenosis does not equate with doomsday predictions or prognoses. So know that you have that, which just means I want to find neutral. I want to not be extended looking up. I don't want to be jutted forward where we get extension up high. I want to be in a triple S throughout my practice. And that's going to be, you're going to feel great. It's going to help strengthen as well as mobilize, those areas in your neck that might be restricted. What else do you have to add to that, Laura?
Nothing much, but I mean, if you're thinking of specific poses, I mean, it sounds like you're doing lit, so you already know we don't do things like fish, which for this exact same reason is really, when we're letting our head release like in table, you're letting gravity, so it's essentially almost neutral with a little bit of extension. But when you're on the other end and your torso, so this end, my torso is higher, my head is down. With fish, my torso is higher, and then I bring my head back. I have to go into hyper extension to get the head on the ground. And it's just not a good, I don't even know why people do that pose. So something like that, like to Kristen's point, would not be great for you. But everything else she said, if you're already doing lit and you're finding you're not doing headstands anyway, great. Dolphin's great. Your head's, your neck is neutral. We look straight ahead with our low lunge. If you want to, if your head, just think of your head as being on top of the spine and the spine laterally flexes and it just comes with it, as opposed to sometimes we'll release it. You can just keep it neutral as it's going. You don't just having more awareness of where your skull is in space. But to Kristen's point, this is again, it's not a doomsday prediction. It's just more information so that you, I always, with somebody like something in the spine, I'm always like, well, let's look at what might have led to this. And so that we can rebalance it, because what's leading to it is almost always position of the head, position of the shoulder, the contributing, the whole, let's just say the whole triple S is usually out of balance. So, yeah.
Great question. I think that affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question here comes anonymously through our support at Lit Yoga. This person says, I have a question for Wednesday Q&A. I'm having tingling occasionally under my big toe and big metatarsal area. Sometimes it radiates towards my second and third toe, right foot only. I notice it after work when I am barefoot, standing, walking at home, not when seated, for example, watching TV or reading. Not every day, but on and off for a few months now. I have also had some pain in the outer side of my right hip at the greater trochanter. This is present seated as well as standing. I've been practicing lit, as you know, for many years, and I'm pretty aware of my body. The right hip pain has been an issue for me prior to lit and shows up perhaps once a year. This is the first time that the tingling has been present. I am wondering if this is how something like Morton's neuroma starts showing up. I am also being very mindful when I'm practicing and focusing greatly on keeping my space in my hips in all poses. I also have osteopenia and osteoporosis. Any suggestions to help this? Thank you so much. She also did come back to add later that she is on her feet all day, no desk job, and sits for a max half hour for lunch. Plus, she also wears a wide toe shoebox. So that's, first of all, we love that you gave us so much information. And I'll start with this one. I certainly think that when we start to see things that tingling is a little sign, flag that there's some sort of neurological involvement usually. And so she is describing this tingling in the foot. She also has a history, and she's talking about in the second and third toe, but occasionally, mostly it's in the big toe and like the big metatarsal area. Occasionally, it's only on the right side. She only has it when standing, not when seated, on and off. She also talks about some pain in the outer, side of the right hip. So, my mind, when I start to hear that, automatically goes to, all right, it's only on the right side. It's kind of following this dermatome of, from the low back that kind of runs down the side of the leg, crosses over, and then comes right over into that big toe area. Could it be related to the hip? Absolutely. Could she have a Morton's neuroma? Absolutely. But she's also kind of doing all the things that we know she should be doing with the wide toe box. I don't think she's wearing pointy-toed shoes. She doesn't talk about any specific tenderness to touch down there. It's more just a tingling. So my first inclination is to think that this is actually coming up from the low back / hip area. We know she has this osteopenia, osteoporosis. So is that related? Maybe. So, my recommendation would be to let's start proximal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's clear that out. We can kind of think of this as like layers of an onion. If she lies on her back and does some nerve glides, and does that affect it? If she stretches out her hip, that place that we know she's had a history of maybe greater trochanteric bursitis, or is this actually referred pain again from the SI joint? We know she's doing a lit, so we know she's smart in her movement patterns, but she also has this job where she is standing all day long. And it is so easy. We talk about sitting being the new smoking. Well, so is prolonged standing. I mean, prolonged standing for me beats up. That's when I start to feel my back, because I'm human and I don't hold my great triple S. I don't hold my low back space open. I might sink into that low back and start to get, that's when I will start to get radiating symptoms occasionally. When I go for long runs and I'm not properly prepared for it, I'm going right into that anterior tilt and I will get some numbness and weird feelings in my feet sometimes. And so I treat proximally. So, for her, I would start doing some nerve glides, seeing if that helps. I would open up that low back fascia. I would, open up into the hips. We know she's strong, so she's probably strengthening there. We, just through her lit practice, but, what can she do throughout her day to really pay attention? Can she, to be honest, stop and get some flexion in her spine, make sure that she is changing the position of that back throughout the day. Can she stop, go up against a wall and press the back into the wall? Because I'm just assuming, perhaps incorrectly, that if you're standing all day long, we all tend to kind of go into that anterior pelvic tilt. We tend to all get a little lazy. We might be going into a sway back. So what can we do to open up that soft tissue throughout the day? Can she stop and stretch out her hips into that piriformis, into that lateral hip, and see if that doesn't, by working up proximally, clear up what's maybe starting down here? And then if that doesn't fix it, then maybe you do look, or maybe you do them both at the same time. You take a look and you palpate around those metatarsal heads to see, does she have some tenderness to touch? Does she have those classic signs of Morton's neuroma, or is this actually coming from higher up, even at the knee joint? What's happening there? So what else do you have to add to that, Laura?
I agree. I mean, it sounds like, think about if you're standing, like you said, even the most aware of us are going to tend to kind of pitch the pelvis forward and the knees back, and you can track the sciatic nerve, and then it comes, then the, the branches of it then come across the calcaneus into the foot. So the other thing I love that you said she probably needs some flexion. I would do a happy squat where you are like getting ankle dorsiflexion, because yes, it could be coming from the hip. It could also be coming behind the knee, but this kind of thing you're talking about into the metatarsal head specifically and into the toe, this could be through the tarsal tunnel. Mm-hmm. There's an entrapment. And that is that plantar fascia. Maybe it's not sore, but if it's not getting pulled on through some good ankle dorsiflexion. Because think about it, if you're standing a lot, that's not like, your ankle's neutral. So you're going to really need to, I think, go do some happy squats if you're not on Lit Daily. That's basically just flexing, but coming maybe from a down dog and walking back into it so you can keep the heels loaded. You're flexing at the ankle, the knee, and the hip. And then you can add on to a little opening in the back by just leaning your ribs on there and getting some back fascial. That feels so good. And then you're kind of releasing that pull across the sciatic nerve, but actually getting down into the distal end of it. Because it could be that all of that stuff, it's like, again, a wire coming down from the hip. I agree with Kristen. I think it's probably originated there and still something might be there, but the standing is making it happen. And it's coming down, and these peripheral entrapments really can happen in the plantar nerves as they weave through the plantar fascia and come around from the medial side the lateral side under to the medial side where the big toe is. So you can just keep the fascia more pliable by doing some more stuff, doing some happy squats during the day, doing some toe raises and then down, and doing some lunges. Yeah, get not just standing, like you said, stagnant, because this comes back to when people are like, I got a standing desk. And I'm always like, okay, that might not be the answer. The answer is to change positions. So, because standing desk, people would have the same issues, if not even more dramatic, because again, they're pitching. It's hard to maintain this plumb line when you don't have any support of a chair or anything. So it's putting actually kind of more demand on you, which is good for a short period of time, but then you need to change positions. So I think look at the hip, try some of those stretches, and then look down and see how is your plantar fascia? Even if it's not bothering you now, is it getting a regular ankle dorsiflexion during the day? Because as we always say, we know you do regularly, but what you do all those other hours does impact. So try and kind of infuse some of that in there, and then let us know. Okay.
All right. Do you have another one, or do we want to?
Yes, I have one more. This is from Sarah, who is a PT. Can you talk a bit about Raynaud's and things you do to help manage also suggestions for others? I'm working with some patients, and I'm recently diagnosed myself. So Raynaud's is this. Speaking of nerves, I think it's pretty genetic. It seems to be genetic. I know people who live in cold climates who have no problem with it, and people that live in warm climates who get a little bit cold, and all of a sudden, so the tips of the fingers will get very cold and numb, and it's associated with cold. It doesn't just happen without the cold component. So there's some kind of thermoregulation nerve that can really impact it, and then it feels really numb, and you're like, I have it. She probably does. So I don't have it enough that it bothers me. I just know if I'm really, really cold, and it's gotten numb, and because then your dexterity's gone, it not only doesn't feel that great, but I just get it under hot water fast and start rubbing. For me, it's a total thermoregulation thing. If I get heat there, it's okay. I need to wear gloves, instead of, I need to wear mittens instead of gloves, because mittens I can stay, I'll go for a walk and I'll start to feel that creeping in the tips of the fingers, and I just start rubbing them together. So circulation. So there is a circulatory component. I don't know. Again, it seems to be hereditary. I don't think it goes away. I think you manage it by knowing what helps. And so what helps me is mittens instead of gloves, keeping them warm. If they do get cold, I immediately start rubbing. I get them in my sweatshirt. I get them under hot water, and it's really not an issue. I don't have them dramatically like it happens any other time. It's it's cold weather is when I get it. Do you have any?
No, I'm the exact same way. I have the same type of symptoms, and I do the exact same thing. I mean, I absolutely, gloves are a no-go. I have to. And sometimes I'll even do 2 layers where I might have I might do like a thin glove underneath a mitten, which can help. I will do those little hand warmers if I know I'm going to be out like skiing.
Oh, skiing. I had to have the hand warmer. My husband's like, it's not that cold. I'm like, okay, I have to have this or I can't hold the pole. Yeah.
Like it's painful. I mean, I walk my dogs, and up here it's very cold and very windy. And that moment of having to take my hand out of the glove to, pick up the poop and put it in the bag. I mean, by the end of that, I'm literally like, my hands are just, the tips are painful. And so I will blow into my, mitten, but same thing for you, Laura. I will rub them together. And I will, open and close my hands really fast, trying to minimize the symptoms if they start, because it is a point of like no return. I've been on a long run where I could have run for miles, but it's my fingertips that will absolutely, I'm like in excruciating pain by the end of the run. And I do the same thing as you. And it burns like fire. You get those hands into that hot water.
But it feels like, I need it. Yeah.
It burns.
I think, like with any other diagnosis, it's kind of like there's like, you just know what works and the best prevention possible. Like I went out to New York the other night and I was such a dummy. I was like, oh, it's nice here. But I have to remember, in New York, there's high buildings, the sun is blocked. So any of the sun warmth is gone. And I didn't bring gloves or mittens. And I was like, and I had to walk like a mile. And I just stuffed my hands up my coat. I look like a ridiculous person. And I just make fist. And I'll say, I pretty only about the last 5 minutes were starting to feel like, a little bit of that pain. So it's just like prepare, and I guess that's the best advice is just know it's going to be there. And it's, or live in a really warm environment. Move. All right. We're working on that. So hopefully that helps, Sarah. I know that's like not maybe the answer, but I think it's really normal. It's very common in women. I have seen men with it as well, but it's very common in women. I think it's a thermoregulation thing combined with, this is like a heightened response. And not all women have it, but when you have it, I've had it forever. Like if you have it, you kind of know it and then you just manage it. And if you live in a cold environment, get some hand warmers.
Hand warmers.
Yeah, get them. Well, thanks for all your questions. You can write us at support@lityoga.com with any questions. And you can always put in there anonymous if you don't want us to mention your name.
Yes, you can find me and Laura on Instagram. We can DM us. I am at kbwilliams99 and Laura is at lara.hyman. You can also find us via email at support@lityoga.com.
Yes. Like I mentioned. She's looping back around.
Oh my God.
I did. That's great. I know. We're like talking forever. We're like, yeah. Also, we should mention, please rate, review, and subscribe. The most important of that being subscribe and share, because we've gotten a lot of accolades for our podcast and we're so appreciative and grateful, but we want to reach more people. So it means so much to us if you download, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for just listening. We're so grateful. We love doing this and you make it happen.
Absolutely. And so keep pulling for us. And as always, we will keep
pulling for you. Woo!